welcome to another instalment of our webinar series. Today we're discussing all things wellness in the workplace. As many of us are finding current phase of lockdown harder, and a lot of us are feeling worn out and unable to cope, pandemic fatigue is well and truly setting in. I'm delighted today to introduce two very special guests, employee health and wellbeing experts, Jenna and Vicky Jones. A firm believer in prevention is better than a cure, Jenna supports a number of employers to maintain and preserve wellbeing and tackle burnout. And introducing Vicky, who has over a decade of experience under her belt at assisting employers to look after their employee health and wellbeing. I think today is going to be a really beneficial webinar all round, whether you're a business leader or not, so I'm really excited. I'm going to be manning the chat box, so if anyone has any burning questions for Vicky and Jenna, ensure that you have all panelists and attendees rule selected. And the webinar is also going to be recorded today, and we'll be sending out some resources and links for you. So we'll send that over to you once the webinar has gone live. So the term pandemic fatigue has been talked about so much recently in the press. Vicky, what is pandemic fatigue?
But I've actually been experiencing pandemic fatigue. So I was really glad to have the opportunity to talk about this and to share my experiences with it, because I didn't actually understand what was happening to me. So probably since February, I've been experiencing bits of fatigue, overwhelm, just feeling generally foggy. And when I looked into pandemic fatigue, it was quite obvious that's what it was really. So I'll give you the definition by the World Health Organization. So the definition is it's a natural and expected reaction to sustained and unresolved adversity in people's lives. It expresses itself as demotivation to engage in protective behaviours, reluctance to seek out information, as well as feelings of complacency, alienation, and hopelessness. Pandemic fatigue evolves gradually over time, and it is affected by the cultural, social, structural, and legislative environment. So that kind of really just sums up what I've been experiencing, especially with the feelings of complacency, hopelessness. Would you agree with that definition, Jenna? I know we've had some talks on it.
Yeah, I would agree with it 100%, and I echo everything that you've just said with regards to yourself. We kind of touched base a good few weeks ago now with regards to how each of us were feeling, and I mentioned to you about emotional exhaustion and sort of brain fog in some instances as well, not feeling particularly agile, etc. But from what you've just described, we obviously look at certain stats at First Beat with regards to how different organisations and individuals are responding. And we found really that sort of before September 2020, about 22% of employees admitted that they were feeling the effects of burnout. And as we know, pandemic fatigue really is akin to burnout as well. But since September of last year, we've seen an increase of 53% in that sort of bracket. And unfortunately, when you suffer from sort of fatigue or burnout, we lose productivity resources essentially as well by 33%, which is very similar to what you've just said. And there's sort of top three contributing factors. So emotional exhaustion, again, because you're feeling isolated, you are particularly paranoid, you're not feeling like you're connected to part of the team, you don't have that emotional structure. And then unfortunately, that's the inability to stay positive, lack of concentration, again, that mental agility, and sort of the resoluteness that you can get through the day, and then unpredictability. So the shift in work patterns, the shift in scheduling for lockdown 1, lockdown 2, lockdown 3. And I'll completely echo everything you said, because for me, prior to Christmas period, I took a HRV assessment. Again, I've got the benefit of tracking my own HRV data, which will give indications of stress or any triggers of stress, sleep quality. So before Christmas, I had a graph of my own HRV. And then I did one sort of post-Christmas as we found out we were going into lockdown 3. And the difference is quite dramatic. But yeah, I feel like, unfortunately, there's an awful lot of contributing factors now, and I think I've suffered all of them.
You and I both, you're not alone. You're not alone. I think it's great that we're able to talk about it and to share, because I think a lot of people are very conscious of feeling like this and not being able to actually understand why. So I think it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, how aware are we of pandemic fatigue in ourselves, Vicky?
Well, I started noticing the symptoms. So I generally, from lockdown 1, I understood for myself personally that I need to support my mental wellness with routines, because I know myself, I do suffer with anxiety and I can suffer with low mood. And so for me, when we first went into lockdown, business aside, on a personal basis, I started to put a routine in place, a weekday routine and a weekend routine as well, so that I was able to consistently do things that were going to pick my mood up. So we all know that exercise, hydration, nutrition is important. Because I'm a sole trader and I work predominantly alone, I needed to make sure that I was involved in things that were going to help connect me to the world, if that makes sense. So I joined within my networking group, we collaborated and set up a charity run. So I've been doing charity runs throughout the lockdown. So I've been managing to do 5K a day. The running helps me, it boosts my mood. I've been enjoying cooking a lot more. And also I've taken up painting, which I haven't done since I was a teenager, because I felt I needed that creativity. I needed to entertain myself, if you like. And I've totally, I don't watch TV anymore. I think that's happened since lockdown. I don't know why. But the last couple of weeks, I have found and noticed that my mood has changed. I've become really clumsy. I fell down in Asda the other day. Honestly, it was so embarrassing. I just went straight down with basket in hand as well, because I think I just walk. I banged my head picking up keys the other day, and I've been experiencing fogginess. And it was only when I was speaking to my friends, and everybody more or less said the same thing, is if you feel tired, then take the time. You know, your body's telling you if you're tired. But for myself, I thought, I just want to know why. Why am I feeling like this? You know, we've been through these lockdowns. I don't understand why now. But when I did a bit of research in terms of pandemic fatigue, that is why. But that feeling of burnout, and I recognise that, having worked with business professionals, I know the signs of burnout, but I could see them happening, and I was thinking, wow, you know, what can I do to try and help myself through it? But I think for me, it was kind of just understanding that it is pandemic fatigue. It's nationwide. We're all feeling this now because of the length of time we've been going through the lockdowns.
Yeah. What about you, Jenna? How have you found it in yourself?
I'll be honest, I found it really tough to accept it. At the point where we came out of, I say, January, then we were told we were straight back into it. I was really positive prior to that, but that denial in myself only made it worse, because I continued on this downward spiral, and I was trying to fix things that I didn't really know needed fixing, if that makes sense. So my own body was telling me it's time to rest, time to take a break, shut down. Again, exactly echo what Vicky's just said with regards to the brain fog, forgetfulness. And I had really weird moments of sort of paranoia. I don't work as a sole trader. I actually work as a part of a bigger organization. And I cross lots of different time zones and territories. So I'm always on, always logged on. And I never felt like I was quite doing enough. So what I decided to do is break my routine. And again, I didn't realize I was doing it, but I've got the added benefit of the data that you can see now. So First Beat provides small ECG monitors, in essence. So it's heart rate variability tracking. So the red and the green is essentially either rest and digest or fight and flight. The red is me being active and alert and productive in some instances. Unfortunately, through the first portion of lockdown, as the top graph shows, there was a good amount of balance. You know, the green was me resting, sleeping, getting good amounts of quality sleep as well, and some exercise. So the lighter blue is me walking around. But unfortunately, after so the Christmas period going into lockdown, there's a second assessment there, which is predominantly red. So me feeling like I wasn't working hard enough, I felt like, not that this is the case, but Big Brother was watching. So my day actually got extended, and I was stealing time from sleep, which is unfortunately the one biggest contributor to rest, digest, helping me feel a little bit more balanced, which it wasn't anymore. I'm waking up at stupid o'clock in the evening, in the early hours of the morning, watching television, thinking, you know, I'm going to get ready and prep for the day. But I completely ignored things like low mood and the paranoia and this shift in sleeping pattern. But sadly, it has been a big impact. And now obviously I have the reality of seeing this data. So I've been able to sort of put in some stratagems for me. So things like creating a diary and sticking to the times in the diary, and writing things down. If I have not an emotional diary, but I write things down like, oh, I've noticed this today, rather than just relying on that data. Yes, that's telling me how I'm acting and maybe triggers a mood, but putting pen to paper has been really useful.
Yeah, and Vicky, you touched upon it earlier briefly, but how can we reduce the potential impact of pandemic fatigue in ourselves, more importantly?
I think the first thing is to really recognize in yourself, and like Jenna mentioned, when you're feeling tired, both myself and Jenna, because we work in health and well-being, I think there was a lot more pressure in accepting that we were experiencing burnout, because if anybody should know how to keep yourselves healthy and well, it should be us. So although we were doing the right things, I think what kind of has helped me really is just allowing and being sympathetic to myself and allowing myself that time to rest. And I know Jenna mentioned about blocking out time in the diary. I physically had to do that in order to maintain my mental well-being, if that makes sense. So I made sure that I had time in the day for me to have these breaks, have the rest that I needed to take. I also started incorporating walks into my daily routine, where I'd always kind of stop for a lunch break, but now if I do have a renewal call at 11 a.m, if I've got the opportunity to, I'll go out and walk and have a chat about it with the client, as opposed to being sat at the desk. Also, I've found helping other people has helped me. So I'm very much a giver. So when I help other people, it really does lift my mood and it helps me feel good. So I have just really, I suppose, looked out for people who might be experiencing the same things that I am. And whether it's a card or a small little gift or an email or a WhatsApp voice call, just really reaching out has helped me to feel better and to sort of help with that fatigue. How about you, Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, again, the reality is we both work within the wellness space, so we should be more in tune to this, but it's just really hard to implement it sometimes, especially for yourself. But again, the consistency and routine is really good, and it sounds silly, but it's so effective. I, unfortunately, because of the lockdown, I've been sort of forced to work in an office kitchen, as I always describe it, because my desk now is the kitchen table. And I was finding, again, moments of prolonged periods of work and focus. So what I've decided to do is create what I refer to as a daylight break. So as Vicky said, if you have a call or if you've got a few calls back to back, put your headphones in and go out for a walk. And statistics show, and our data shows, that if you take what we refer to as, it's actually boosts resilience. So daylight break or time away from your desk will increase resilience over time. So if you can get some recovery element in the day, the reality of it is you'll sleep better, you'll actually be able to cope a lot more with the stresses of the day. So that daylight break's really good as well, because I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like a mushroom. I'm always in the dark. I'm always focusing on something on the laptop and in a space which is really quiet. But to get out into nature and actually see some activity, it brightens me up and it makes me feel a little bit more alert. Aside from that, again, I've really tried to steal some time away from devices. I have a no device rule for one day of the week, and it sounds, again, a really small change, but it's made a big impact because I have that creativity and freedom of thought. Then I'm no painter. I'm not anybody who can sort of create something easily, but what I do is get out and push myself, and I do use data really to try and encourage me to perform a little bit better and more. So without a device, it's actually allowing me to tune into myself a little bit better and understand that, hey, you know what, I do feel tired, or oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to cook something, rather than being constantly inspired by what graph is showing me this, that, or the other.
Yeah. And as business leaders, I know you kind of have to practice what you preach as well. So how can we spot somebody with pandemic fatigue within your team, and what can we do to help them? Vicky?
I would say to just be, I suppose, a little bit more sensitive when you have members of your team maybe who are making the decision to turn their cameras off,
Yeah.
if you are having conversations and people's language and tone changes, that could be a good indication that they are suffering from fatigue. Also, when people do respond emotionally, and I've certainly I've received a few emails that are quite emotionally worded. You can pick up the phone and speak to that person, and I suppose increase the amount of communication that you are having with any individuals that you are finding are going a bit more quiet, because that's what we tend to do when we are suffering fatigue, is to get quiet. Also, if there are performance issues, again, just be a little bit more sympathetic. We all know how hard it has been over the last sort of 12 months. I think with fatigue setting in now, I think there are going to be top performers even within your organisation who you will and unfortunately is the top performers that you notice straight away, because there is that big performance dip. But there's certainly lots of things that you can do. Communication is key, I would say. Open communication is key.
Yeah, what about you, Jenna?
I agree. It's always the smaller things that people typically they don't notice, unless it is that top performer who dips relatively quickly or sharply. I think the hardest part is it's that lack of engagement. So the more you can connect with people, the better. It gives you a better foundation to reach out as well, rather than this out of the blue text message or phone call, which kind of makes people feel, again, that maybe surge of paranoia of, oh, why have they called me? Well, if there's a constant and regular stream of communication, it does really help. If people are particularly, quieter than normal, they may just be having a bad day. But if this is a consistent thing and a pattern that people have demonstrated and shown for a period of days or weeks, it may well be that is unfortunately an effect of burnout. So I would suggest maybe introducing things like coffee breaks. Again, I work for a larger organization, so I'm very much involved in a lot of this stuff and how we can implement these things. So coffee breaks are 15-minute spells in the day, or perhaps even towards the end of the day, where people can just sound off or give a sound bite for how they think and feel. It's nothing work related anyway. Or you could have a WhatsApp group which is purely about sharing fun content or GIFs, or communicate via GIF, because the smallest things have the biggest impact, I think. And again, another one for particularly a large company, multiple of staff, is having a no email rule. So after 6 o'clock, you have to lead by example as a leader or a mentor or a buddy, if that's what you're called. But no email rules post 6 o'clock, because it takes the onus away of, I have to be always on, always working, pushing it. And then also, I think an open house policy of everybody has a voice and everyone's allowed to share. Again, that communication does dampen the effect of isolation, which unfortunately has one of the biggest sliding impacts of low productivity. So I think it's something we as leaders or mentors, we should be trying to implement as best we can.
Yeah. As well, a few of my clients, with the need to sort of pivot their businesses, they've taken the opportunity to introduce more training programs and to introduce more sort of ownership to employees. So giving people more of a purpose, that again is going to help boost mood and boost confidence as well. And I think everyone's self-esteem is quite low at the moment. So any opportunities to integrate any new training into teams, and to give people the opportunity to make decisions without any regrets. I think one of the clients that I was speaking to the other day, they've done that, and they've reorganized their organization, and they've introduced that element, and it just gives employees that little bit more control and responsibility as well.
Yeah. So are there any resources you would recommend for leaders to tackle pandemic fatigue within their workforce?
Well, yeah, there are. I think, as I sort of alluded to before, I've got the added benefit of working and using data. Firstly, are a wellness provider, essentially, and one resource is the use of data. I know it sounds daft, but this is really an anonymized view of how staff are coping, and it is a remote source as well. So if the majority of the workforce aren't working in an office, it's how you can really be reactive and preventative to how they feel, and understand really, again, some of the patterns of that. So essentially what we do is we help organizations create and build a wellness strategy internally. So these small heart rate variability monitors get shipped out to all of the staff. And over a course of time, as they wear them, we'll see spikes and triggers in stress and or potentially low mood by low and minimal activity, because it will track things like that, but also sleep and rest quality. So if we can be a big part of maybe influencing that wellness strategy and potentially encourage a culture shift within the organization, it allows managers to be, again, more proactive about introducing additional resources. Once every individual wears this device, we'll give them a coaching session. So 40% of our wellness and health is impacted by our lifestyle choices. So we can see some of the choices in addition to the working pattern, really, of what this individual is or is not doing. So we can provide one-to-one advice, but then the group manager will get an anonymized report, which will help steer some of the decision making. And I think as well, if company leaders are at a bit of a loss, sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is to plow money into anything. But with this, it gives more of a streamlined effect, and individuals the likes of Vicky, who can actually steer them towards the right resources as per the data that we can provide, is really, really useful. And it also makes that manager feel like they're making a sound decision, a financial decision that they know is going to make a huge positive impact. But I think, as I say, aside from that, maybe looking at park runs or resources where you can go out and get on group walks, or, as I say, if you're ready to run, you might not be, but maybe things like reading hours, daylight breaks. I think if you can integrate some of those, which are relatively cost effective and or free, there are local community resources as well that people can tap into. So don't ignore those. There are obviously listening ears out there that you can engage with as well. So if individuals feel particularly at a loss, that they can engage with, and it's about sharing that information. So that communication is absolutely vital. So if we can get this cross section of individuals using strategies and data and wellness, but also if you've got any resources for the likes of your sole traders or anybody, just tap into it, because I feel like they can often be ignored. So I would check out those for sure.
Yeah. And what about you, Vicky?
Well, I work with health plan and health insurance providers to help support employee health and wellbeing strategy. And as Jenna said, if as an organisation you have recognised that there are some areas that you could be supporting your employees or your teams, some of the products that have been launched and upgraded, I suppose, since the initial lockdown means that there's a lot of technology out there that can help support and help to educate and empower employees. So the first sort of thing I would say to look at when we're talking about mental wellness, and I know there was a recent report from Deloitte a few months ago that recognised for every £1 that an employer invests in supporting mental well-being, £5 is returned to the business. So there's definitely a case to be made if you don't have anything in place at the moment for your employees in terms of health plans or access to health resources. Health plans are very low cost, and again, it's all about really engaging with employees. Now, a few years ago, when I used to go in and do employee launches, it would all be about the physical site presentations and posters and leaflets and word of mouth. We are now isolated a little bit more, so it is important that when you are looking at choosing a health plan, that it's going to engage with your staff. It's going to help staff to feel like they are empowered to make good lifestyle changes or to increase activity. So there's lots of different, I know First we have a relationship with Vitality, for instance, but there's plenty of different types of resources available for businesses to purchase to help support staff, and they include things like access to meditation videos. There's 30-day plans, 10-day plans, access to trained counsellors over the phone, face-to-face counselling where it's appropriate, virtual GP access. I personally have been stuck into my apps when it comes to meditating. I'm not a huge I've never been a huge person to meditate, to be honest with you, but I've read all of the clinical studies around meditation, and so I am investing that time every morning in myself as well. So if you would like to introduce things like mindfulness, and it needn't be painting, it might be knitting. I've tried everything, me knitting, crocheting, and also nutrition and exercise plans as well. So there's lots and lots of support available. It isn't expensive to implement, and you might already have something in place where you just need to be able to pull that out. So yeah, there's lots available in terms of resources. Yeah, that is it.
So what are your top 3 tips that we can all do to shake off pandemic fatigue? Okay.
So mine would be to open communication, join a club. There's plenty of online things that you can do. I raised £1,300 running for Cash for Kids, which is a charity that is close to my heart. And I found gamifying exercise. I've never been a person to be involved in group sports. I've always done my own thing. Even at the gym, I don't like having a gym buddy. But what I've found is when I have been fundraising, and when I have been making a note of my exercise and what I've been doing, I've not really been competing, but it's been really nice to see other people within my network group and what they've been doing, and having that chat on WhatsApp. So communication's the first one for me. The second one is to really look after your nutrition. I know we always say this, but when you eat good, you feel good, and you do feel more in control of yourself as well. And I've been utilising lots of books that have been sat on the shelf for quite a while in terms of prepping healthy foods. I think because I certainly, when I was experiencing pandemic, I would go through a 6-pack of Walker's Crisps on the sofa, when I had low mood. So making sure you've got healthy stuff in the fridge is really important. And also I would say just really spending time with yourself, self-care. I used to call it a pamper night. Now I call it my self-care night. But having that time to put a face mask on, whatever your self-care is for you. It could just be some time on YouTube or videos, or it could be music, whatever that self-care is for you, to really do that and put the time aside for that.
And what about you, Jenna?
I think in brief, for me, for the individual, take that daylight break. 20 to 15 minutes really does help boost resilience. We do obviously need to improve our sleep quality. So for the individual, take that daylight break. And for an organisation, it's really good to implement that into people's diaries, definitely by example as a manager. I think also try and be simple but consistent about your times. So have a time where you absolutely fundamentally do log on and when you log off. So again, for a wider organisation, that's really good to keep track of people, make sure they're not bleeding through into that post 6 p.m. email exchange. And again, it sounds simple, but quality food and exercise. Get your 30 minutes outside if you can, after work even, or have a really healthy snack, because again, it's all about energy levels and resource levels, and our body resources are taking an absolute hammering at the moment. So that would be my sort of top 3.
Nice. So we've asked the guys on the floor, and I think we've had some really interesting questions. We've had one from Lucy, and she's been working like 14-hour days every day, and the biggest issue is probably clients emailing out of hours as well. So how do you kindly tell clients these hours can't continue, like this, but you can't lose them either? So how do you kindly tell them to stop, basically?
Lucy, I hear you. I feel your pain. I also have this, like I said before, I work across lots of territories internationally. So my times do also overlap, unfortunately. So I need to email them back. But at the end of the day, these people are human. You're never going to lose them in terms of the human touch, the human element. And yes, they are doing business with you. But by having those designated parts in your diary, which is very much, I'm out of office now until this, I think, again, that communication element is absolutely fundamental. So if they know, gosh, I'm not going to reach Jenna or Lucy post 6 o'clock, I need to be a bit more responsible about how I'm organising my time to reach out to her. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do our best. And I believe if you have this routine of 6 o'clock, out of office goes on, and maybe at 8:30 start a little bit early, or even 8 a.m. That's when you start to look through these emails, but not respond to them, and then respond from 9 o'clock. That will absolutely help. And it'll also help you to set some boundaries with them as well as yourself, to think, you know what, it is now a logging off moment and I'm going to take some time out for me.
Have you got anything to add to that, Vicky?
I'd 100% agree to that. It's boundaries, it's setting boundaries, and as leaders as well, we need to lead by example. So if your manager has on his email, I'm out of office now until, you know, you should be doing that as well as employees, and really just putting that boundary and that expectation in there, because realistically, we are all human beings. We all have commitments outside of work. A normal working day is normally sort of 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever that is. So whatever that is for you, don't feel guilty because you're working from home to feel like you should be answering emails later in the night, because that's going to have such a negative impact, and you're not helping other people, because if they're sending you emails late at night, then they're not doing the right thing either. So I would, if you want to have a conversation with that particular, I understand what you're saying when it comes to clients, because you don't want to upset clients, but I think if you do have that one-on-one conversation with them and just explain to them that, you know, I am experiencing a bit of fatigue at the moment, so I am trying to adhere to having these boundaries. So I'm not going to be at my laptop after 6 o'clock. If you do need any particular support out of normal working time, then if you could let me know in advance, and that way you can move your diary around for them, you know.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think I need to implement that as well. Sue's asked, do you think when people could start going out again, there will be a longer lasting effect from pandemic fatigue?
I personally do. I've started to feel anxiety about when we do get back to normal. So I think that there is going to be a period where we are going to have to support each other and realise that this is not something that we are just going to automatically get back to normal from. And there are going to be changes to our environment long term when we do get back. So I've had conversations with quite a few clients who are raring to go and to get back into business, and so am I. I just think that we need to emotionally support each other through this, and to recognise some people are going to be eager to get back in, other people's going to take a little bit of time and a bit of hand holding as well, and reassurance. And I think certainly from a lot of the clients that I've spoken to, some of the changes they've made have been for the better for their organisation, for their people, and they will continue with those changes when we do get back to normal, if you like.
Yeah, I agree. I think from our perspective, we work globally, so I've seen data just related to this from different countries who are handling this pandemic a little bit better than we are, perhaps, or differently, should I say. Essentially what we found is there has been a spike in anticipatory anxiety. We've noticed when people have been wearing these devices, that we've seen as they're on their now daily commute, or they're integrating some days of the week to go back to the office, there have been spikes of anxiety, which we've discussed with these end clients as a one-to-one, and then fed this information back to the employer. And there are small stratagems that they've sort of included. So you've obviously got your red card, a yellow card in a sport environment, but they've introduced sort of a traffic light system. So if someone is feeling anticipatory anxiety, which I think we will do in this country as well, because we're going to go from being isolated in a box essentially on our own to sitting on a train like sardines in a can. It's not going to be pleasant, but once they reach the office, there is a red, yellow and a green card that people can use on their desk. So green is, yes, I'm approachable, I'm happy, I'm feeling great, I'm outside. Martin, yes, it'll be like Woodstock on that desk. Or it'll be yellow, there's a bit tentative, stay 2 meters away, and then red, just don't come anywhere near me. Because what it's allowing them to do is communicate how they feel without actually being quite vocal, and then feeling like they're under pressure then to say or not say something, particularly in a management perspective. So I've seen some evidence of this from other organizations that we deal with overseas. But I think here it's going to be a slow burn at the start as we start to trickle out, but then fingers crossed, you know, by the winter time, we'll see everything come back to normal.
I think that traffic light system is genius, you know, before approaching, because I certainly know people in my friend group and my family who they have got different experiences, you know, from the extreme where they just don't want, you know, to go for a walk or anything, to people who are literally raring to go. So I think that's a really good way of
yeah,
allowing
very
yourself
simple. Yeah, and it stops people having to have that awkward conversation as well.
Yeah, 100%. We've also heard, like, you know, the term work-life balance be thrown about over the past couple of years now. Do you think as when the world does start opening up again, leaders will start promoting that work-life balance a lot more than ever?
Sorry, Vic, I don't know whether you've got it, but yes, essentially, again, I sit in a very unique position, I think, because I do see some of this and have this fed back to me, that some people now are taking the big leap of dissolving large office spaces. They don't need them. So what they're doing is they're including small microsites. Again, these decisions are data-led from one perspective, but it's also very much human-led. They know people can work well from home. There is no need for the helicopter management anymore. We have so many different pieces of software that show when people are logged on or they're not. So they're taking the decision now, which I think is a really great step, to dissolve large office spaces, be more flexible, and allow people the autonomy to make that decision. And by definition, because we have and can make those decisions, it makes us feel a bit more secure in what we're doing and more confident. And I think as we come out of the pandemic, that's going to really help people's confidence levels.
Yeah. I mean, one of the positives that I've seen from the pandemic has been that breakdown between home work life, because we're literally in each other's living rooms, kitchens, we see each other's dogs and we see each other's children. So a lot of the time, and I always encourage the clients that I work with, you know, to let the kids shout in the background, you know, let the dog come into the office, because, you know, you're people do look up to their leaders, and they also look to see their patterns and behaviors. So I think a lot more businesses know each other a lot better, especially with their home life. The home work balance, I think we really need to look at this and make sure that if we are continuing to work from home, and if you do have a large workforce who are going to be working from home, that you are ensuring that they are, as we've said through this webinar, are having those breaks and are having those boundaries. I think if we neglect that, and leadership teams are the ones that should be leading the way with that, because if we see our leaders doing that, then we feel that we are able to do that ourselves.
Yeah, I think you're right, Katie. I think there is a work-life blend there, so I think you're right. But yeah, Vicky, it's understandable that, you know, people feel pressured into working all the time, basically. Sorry, my words can't come out there. But yeah, we're nearing to the end here, so if anyone does have any questions, and just email me them on grace@prosper2.co.uk, and I'll send them over to the ladies and they can answer them for you. But thank you, girls, that was amazing, and I hope everyone found it really valuable.